Hi, in this video, we will look at paraphrasing, some common pitfalls of paraphrasing and how to do it right. Unlike direct quotations, where you're reproducing content in its original words, paraphrasing means reporting somebody else's idea or ideas using your own words. As such, paraphrasing shows that you have understood the content of someone else's work and you are able to talk about it in your own words. So it's a more advanced way of interacting with others' material as it allows you to bring in your own academic voice. However, just because you are using your own words to present an idea doesn't mean that you don't need to acknowledge the original source. It's really important to understand that you must still provide a citation and a reference for any paraphrased material. Even though you are using your own words, the idea isn't your own, and you must acknowledge where you got that idea from. So make sure you do provide a citation and a reference. Now, paraphrasing isn't always as easy as it sounds. In particular, make sure you don't simply use a thesaurus to change a few words in the original sentence or paragraph. Let's take a look at these two sentences by Steed here and their paraphrased material. In the original version it says, "Teachers will endeavour to support students in their learning and for the most part do a pretty fine job working within the limitations of time and student numbers. It seems unlikely that class numbers or the amount of time we get with our students will change in the near future." The paraphrased material then reads, "Educators will venture to assist pupils with their erudition and mostly do very good work within the boundaries of time and the number of pupils. It might not be likely that class sizes or how much time we receive with our pupils will alter in days to come." Here, "teachers will endeavour" was replaced with the synonyms "educators will venture." "Support students" became "assist pupils," and "in their learning" became "with their erudition." Already, this is starting to sound a little bit clunky. Further then, "for the most part" was changed to "mostly," "do a pretty fine job working" became "do very good work," and "within the limitations of time and student numbers" is now "within the boundaries of time and the number of pupils." In the second sentence then, "it seems unlikely" became "it might not be likely," and "class numbers" was turned into "class sizes." And then finally, "the amount of time we get with our students" became "how much time we receive with our pupils," and "will change in the near future" is now "will alter in days to come." I think you might agree that overall, the paraphrased material sounds rather pompous and unnatural. And this is what happens when you merely exchange some expressions with synonyms. It becomes clunky. More importantly, however, the main problem with this type of paraphrasing is that it is actually a type of plagiarism. Note that the reference to the original source is given at the end of the paraphrased material, and there are no quotation marks. The author thus acknowledges the content isn't their own, but the absence of quotation marks implies that this is their own way of expressing this content. However, that isn't true. The words might be different, but the information structure and the overall sentence structure are based entirely on the original. And what is more, the words aren't the author's own words either. Rather, they found those words in a thesaurus, based on the words in the original source. So, in a nutshell, the author is here plagiarizing the original information structure and selling it as their own. So, make certain you avoid this type of paraphrasing and indeed this type of plagiarism at all costs. Now, if I can't paraphrase like this, you ask, how am I meant to paraphrase then? Well, an effective paraphrase usually observes the following three principles. First, make sure that your paraphrase has a different structure to the original, so that you can avoid plagiarizing its information structure. Second, your paraphrase should mainly consist of different vocabulary. Note that it says mainly here and not entirely. That is because it is perfectly okay to reuse some of the original words. After all, you can't reinvent the English language. Some key vocabulary like technical terms and maybe some very common expressions will have to be reused, and that's fine. Third, make sure that the paraphrase retains the same meaning as the original. This is very important, as otherwise you are misrepresenting the original's content and are spreading misinformation. For example, if the original says that something is a hypothesis, you cannot then paraphrase it as the author claims that X, Y, Z is the case. Instead, you would have to maintain the hypothetical nature of the original and write something like the author hypothesizes or suggests that X, Y, Z is the case. Okay, so retaining the original meaning is really important. So let's look at an example taken from Bailey's 2018 book on academic writing. Here, the sentence, "There has been much debate about the reasons for the Industrial Revolution happening in 18th century Britain rather than in France or Germany," has been paraphrased as "why the Industrial Revolution occurred in Britain in the 18th century instead of on the continent has been the subject of considerable discussion." Now, if we compare these two sentences, it becomes clear that they indeed follow the three principles we discussed just now. For instance, the expression "there has been much debate about" at the beginning of the original sentence was turned into "has been the subject of considerable discussion," which appears at the end of the paraphrased version. So we can see that the original has been restructured and different vocabulary was used to express the same meaning. Further, the reasons for was moved to the beginning of the sentence and turned into why. Again, we've got restructuring taking place and a complete change of expression. Then the expression "the Industrial Revolution" was maintained as used in the original because it would be very awkward to forcibly use a different term for that concept. The verb "happening" was changed to "occurred," which is a change of vocabulary through the use of a synonym. "In 18th century Britain" was turned into "in Britain in the 18th century," which also keeps the expressions Britain and 18th century, but with some slight grammatical restructuring. Again, reusing these words is fine, as they are the standard expressions to use for that country and the century. Finally, rather than "in France or Germany" became "instead of on the continent," with some changes in vocabulary to express a similar concept. And this is how you paraphrase more effectively without plagiarizing the original's information structure and without creating rather clunky sentences that are hard to understand. So, to wrap this up, here are 6 top tips taken from Murray's book on writing essays. First, make sure the idea you are intending to paraphrase is absolutely clear in your mind. You first need to understand the idea yourself before you can write about it in your own words. Second, look out for any words that may carry subtle nuances which could get lost in your paraphrase. Make sure you do not misrepresent any of the original's meaning. Third, take notes on the idea and use those notes rather than the original text to paraphrase. This will help you move away from the original's wording. 4, rewrite the idea using your notes, and as we saw in the previous example, don't just change words, but also restructure and reorganize the sentence. 5, make sure that the new text flows smoothly so that it isn't awkward and difficult to read like we saw in the poor paraphrase at the beginning of this video. And finally, check the final text to make sure it's an accurate reflection of the original. Okay, so there we go. These are some tips on how to paraphrase, which we hope will help you to engage with source material more easily in future.